making a living. But even though it speaks about making a living, essentially, the principles that he's going to talk about over here really applies across the board in every physical endeavor. Okay, so the Rebbe is going to focus on our parsha. Our parsha, as we know, primarily speaks about the building of the Mishkan. But in addition to speaking about the building of the Mishkan, it begins the first few psukim about Shabbos, and it starts itself off by how we work during the week. So the Rebbe is going to analyze this, the first few psukim in our parsha, and based on this, elaborate more about how our attitude needs to be towards work, etc. Hascholos parsha saying the beginning of our parsha is Vayakhel Moshe is called Aspnei Yisrael, that Moshe gathered and collected the entire congregation of Bnei Yisrael. Vayomer Aleim, and he told them, Eila hadvarim asher tziva Hashem lasas oisam. These are the matters that Hashem said to do them. What is the Eila hadvarim? What does he say after the words Eila hadvarim? And we're going to discuss really what the words Eila hadvarim is referring to. So he starts off, Sheishis yom te'asa malach. 6 days, work shall be done. It says te'asa. We're going to make a point of that as well. On the seventh day, it will be for you holy. Shabbos, Shabbos, and Vagomer. A Shabbos of Shabbos. And that we're also going to talk about what's the double expression over here, Shabbos, Shabbos. It says, Yeshkan Diyukim, but I've been Vikushis. There are many examinations of the exact language, different questions for Kamamem, Shoilim, Dam, before Torah, that many of them are asked by the commentaries on the Torah already address these questions. First of all, the question is, Ma Pirush HaMusik Vayakhel Moshe. What's the meaning of the concept of Moshe gathered? The common expression of the Torah is Vayomer Moshe. And Hashem and Moshe Rabbeinu said, Kefia Kosav Rabim, like it says in many places, Begama Parsha Seinu, and also in our Parsha, in one of the following psukim, where it talks about the command, about the donations of the Mishkan. So it says, Vayomer Moshe. Why all of a sudden here we begin with the concept Vayakhel Moshe? Moshe gathered. It's a very unusual term that we don't find throughout the Torah. That's the first question. Base. These are the matters that Hashem commanded to do them. He doesn't explain what is he referring to when he says these are the matters. So the question is, what is it actually referring to? Like we said, the majority of what the parsha is going to talk about is the building of the Mishkan and the transmission of Moshe Rabbeinu's instructions to the Yidden about the building of the Mishkan, as opposed to Parshas Truma, Tzav over there was Hashem instructing Moshe Rabbeinu, and here it's the instruction of Moshe Rabbeinu to the Yidden about the Trumas of Mishkan. But so Rav Mefarshei Torah must be in him. So the majority of the commentaries on the Torah explain that the Eila Hadvarim, these are the matters that Hashem commanded to do them. Moshe was intending to speak about the commands of the donations for the Mishkan. But the Rebbe says it's difficult. This explanation is difficult. Because afterwards, Betrumas HaMishkan, by the donation of Mishkan, Namar Shuva Yomer, it says again, and he said. So why does he have to say, if he's referring to already about the Mishkan, Eila Dvarim Shetziva Vayla Soisam, though he interrupts with Shabbos, why does he have to start again with Vayomer? So therefore, from the fact that right before he deals with the Trumas of the Mishkan, the donations for the Mishkan, he says Vayomer, and before that he says Eila Dvarim. Therefore, we must say that when it says these are the matters that Hashem commanded to do them, it's referring to the idea that's explained before Vayomer. But says immediately after that pasuk, which is what speaks about immediately after that. 6 days you shall have work done. Guilty, move on. So therefore, the question that's not understood. Im kain, if so, Vadi al Shmir Shabbos par Nitzavim B'Aseres Adibris. On keeping Shabbos, they were commanded in Aseres Adibris. What's this matter that Hashem commanded you to tell you something new? So Gimel, he says, Madu Nemar Shabbos Shabbos and Pamayim Ina Shabbos. Why does it say also Shabbos, Shabbosim. Why say twice the idea of Shabbos? It should say just once. Daled, the fourth question is, Rashi says, V'kach nemar gam b'gemara medrash v'zoya. This also says not just in Rashi, but it's brought down the Gemara, it's brought down the Medrash, it's brought down the Zohar, Vayakhel Moshe, the events of this week's parsha, that Moshe Rabbeinu gathered and collected the Yidden. Ira l'machras Yom Kippurim occurred on the morrow of Yom Kippur, B'shah sheyarad Moshe Mahar Sinai. When Moshe, at the time when Moshe descended from Har Sinai with the second set of luchas, when the Yidden were totally forgiven for the sin of the golden calf. Move on from this understood Vayakhel Moshe Gomer, that the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu gathered and collected the Yidden, kosher and Yom Kippurim is connected with Yom Kippur, Shetoichnoi Kapara. The content of Yom Kippurim is atonement. When Hashem told Moshe, Salachti Kiparacha, I have forgiven as you said, as you told me, as you asked me to do. Concerning the sin of the golden calf. Therefore, we need to understand what's the connection between what's spoken about over here with forgiveness. So essentially, in short, the Rebbe had 4 questions, and we're going to go into explaining the main point over here. We're going to speak about how one needs to be involved in worldly matters, beginning from doing work during the 6 days of the week. And by explaining that, the 4 different questions over here will become clear. Based. The matters will be understood. After mentioning what the Chazal say, in connection with this exactness of language, it says, Tei Asa, Tov Tzruya Ein Kemutza. It says a Tseire under the letter Tov, and an Ayin, there's a comment under it. V'loi Ta'asa, Tov Ayin Psuchis. It doesn't say Ta'asa with a Pasach under both letters Tov and Ayin. What's the difference if we say Te'asa or Ta'asa? Hevdol, who the difference is, Pirish Te'os Ta'asa b'Tov v'Ayin Psuchis. When you write it with a Pasach under the Tov and the Ayin, U'asiya b'mloi tzumas halev. It's an action. It's doing things with the full attention and full investment of the person. Ilu Pirish Te'asa. As opposed to when it says Te'asa with Tov with Tzruya with a Tzeri under the Tov. U'asiya shel derech agav. It's a doing that's done in a way that's like as a secondary matter, as something he's doing, not with his full attention and interest. The thing is like almost done on its own. He's doing it, but it's like happening by itself. In the Mechilta, which is the Medrash on this pasuk, it says, when Yidden fulfill the will of their maker, of their creator, their work is done through others. So that's the way the Mechilta explains the words Teyasa. 6 days work shall be done, not 6 days you shall do work, which would have been the meaning for what it said Tasa, because it's trying to tell us that if we are the way we're supposed to be, so we don't have to worry about working, work will be taken care of. Zu habarach min hashamayim, says in the last paragraph. This is a bracha from heaven, that others take care of our work for us. The Ram yet l'chol davar yesh gam bechinas kifi shiva v'yisod. In every matter, there is the levels, also the way it's in what a person needs to do in his service to Hashem. The inyan shall te'asa b'taf tzruya kifi shu ba'avoidu. And the idea that a matter is done the way it says with a tzedei under the taf, the way it's in a person's service, meaning even when the person is doing work himself, not others are doing it for him, there is still 2 types of way of doing work. There's a way of doing work in a way of te'asa, it is being done, or it's ta'asa, you are doing it. The work and the mundane matters that a person has to do in the 6 weekdays, needs to be without focused and specific involvement. Ki'im, rather, b'mida, in such a measure, as if the matter is like happening on its own. That's the way he has to do it. in a derech agav way, like we explained before. The Rebbe brings a pasuk that he's spoken about also on other occasions. It says an interesting pasuk. It says, "Yigia kapecha kisoichal," the toil of your palms when you eat. Ashrecha v'toivlach, you are fortunate and it is good for you. Pirish hadvarim, who the meaning of these words are this pasuk, shel adam l'shem tzrachav agufni, the toil of a person for his bodily needs, which is included all in the word toichal and the word eating. It only needs to be with one's hands and external organs. Daimim are similar to this. Kapecha bilvad. It's only your palms. Ilu hamoyach va'alev, as opposed to the brain and the heart. Tzrichim liyashkuim b'Torah mitzvahs, need to be immersed in the study of Torah and mitzvahs. And we actually have many stories. For example, in the Zechronis of the Frierdiker Rebbe and other stories of the Frierdiker Rebbe and of Chassidim, that there were different Yidden, even relatively simple Yidden, that they would sit in their store, they would sit doing their work, and they would be saying words of Tehillim that they knew by heart, or reviewing Mishnayos, etc., because they didn't invest their brain and thought and their heart into it. It was only something that they did with their hands. This pasuk, the Rebbe brings also a famous story about Yaakov, that it said that when he was on the way to Lavan's house, he put stones around his head. The Rebbe asked, why did he not put stones around the rest of his body if he was worried about wild animals? But he was trying to protect his head, that when he went to Lavan, he should not be immersed with his head in the Torah, in the work of the, working for Lavan, etc. He should reserve his head and his heart for Torah mitzvahs. When the way how he acts is in such a way that that's the toil of your palms that you will eat, then you are fortunate and it's good for you. This actually fits into a different Maimer Chazal that says, what is this double expression? It's you're fortunate and it's good for you. Why does it say a double expression? To teach you, you are fortunate in this world, and it's good for you in the world to come. When do you have this double good, both in this world and the world to come? It's when a person only invests the energy of his external part of his body, but he reserves his intellect and his heart for spiritual things, for Torah mitzvahs. There was also a story with one of the Rabbeim seeing that one of his chassidim was very involved in galoshes. In Yiddish we said galoshen, and he's jokingly remarked to him, a fuss in galoshen, or the fis in galoshen, I've seen feet that are inside of galoshes. I never saw a head in galoshes. In other words, the head has to be removed from the physical labor and being invested in the worldly matters. And again, like we said before, it's not limited to work and making a living, but all physical and mundane pursuits all fall into that category. Zugam kavanas te'asa tzruya. This is also the meaning when there's a tzere under the top of the word te'asa. Derech agav. It is something that's just like a passing thing. Ein adam shakua ba'asakav v'moichev v'liba. A person is not immersed in his business and his different preoccupations with his brain and his heart. Kiyam b'koyach ha'asiyah b'levad, only with his power of action. And not only that, the Rebbe adds now another aspect. You could invest your power of action, but the question is, how much of your power of action should you invest? Even the power of action, it's only used through him, only in the sufficient amount, in the most necessary amount, to be able to form a vessel for the bracha of Hashem. And we've mentioned before, there's a mashal of the Tzemach Tzedek, that a person that thinks that if he works more, or again, whatever other pursuit he has, he does more of it, he'll make a bigger keli for Hashem's brachas. It doesn't necessarily work that way. the keli has to be measured according to the bracha. For example, a garment. A garment has to be measured to the person's body. If a person decides to make a garment that's too big, then not only won't it serve the purpose that the garment is supposed to serve, but they can trip over the garment. The same thing, the person's vessel that he's making for the bracha of Hashem, which is using their power of action in whatever brachas they need to have Hashem's brachas in, needs to be just to the necessary amount that the Eibusher should be able to enclose his bracha in it. Why is that so? So the Rebbe explains. Because in truth, it's not the vessel, it's not the action of the person that accomplishes and brings down and makes him have the parnasa or the success in whatever he needs success in, but rather that Hashem will bench you in everything that you do. It's not the action that imparts the parnasa, rather it's the bracha of Hashem that gives the person parnasa. The bracha of Hashem demands and needs a vessel derived from nature. Therefore, it's necessary to do it with all you do. It's only a vessel. So therefore, we have to realize, let's not focus on the vessel, let's focus on the bracha. The Rebbe, I think, once gave a mashal. It's like a wallet. It's not going to help to have a wallet or a purse or pockets in your pants to put money in if you don't have the money to put in there. On the other hand, it's not going to make a difference if the wallet is bigger or smaller, or the pants pocket is bigger or smaller, or the purse is bigger or smaller. The main thing is the money that you put in there. So the same thing, I think that I've also said, in anything you do, it's not what you're doing. Oh, I picked this job, I didn't pick that job, that's why I made. It's not that. The Eibusher will send you the bracha in anything you do, as long as it's something that will enable you to bring in the money that you need. You can't go ahead and decide you're going to sell single staples and therefore be able to have enough money for chinuch of children in Jewish schools, etc., etc. There was this guy that used to come to Yeshiva al-Khan Chabad, and he was a little bit hard of hearing. So when he used to talk to some people, he used to be heard across the zal. And one time he said in the booming voice, because of his hard of hearing situation, I once knew a guy that made $1 million selling paper clips. Okay, fine. Most of us are not going to make $1 million for selling paper clips. You got to find a keli that's appropriate for it. But this keli, that keli, a bigger keli, a smaller keli, don't worry, Hashem could put in the bracha in whatever keli, whatever vessel we put it into. For that reason, the action that one does to be able to make a living, or again, like we said, for any other bodily or physical need, needs to be only in the measure that's necessary for the vessel to exist. If it doesn't work, so there's not going to be a vessel. There won't be any place to be the bracha to come down. But other than that, it's just what you need. This means what we said earlier, that the brain and the heart should not be complete, should not be at all immersed in the matter with all types of schemes and plots and plans, etc. And also the power of action should only be used in the appropriate measure, in the necessary amount. It's actually reminiscent a little bit to something else that's brought down the Chassidus when it comes to eating or indulging in other physical needs. So the Chassidus says, we're talking here about totally kosher food. So in totally kosher food, when it comes to things that are luxuries, things that are unnecessary, I shouldn't be eating that at all. Why? What purpose? And even that which is necessary to eat, to be able to exist, to be able to live, and whatever, I should only use it, obviously, for avoidance Hashem. Here he's saying it in a little bit different way. I should only use it to the amount that it's necessary. Now the Rebbe says a very interesting thing. There are two ways that Chassidus says one could look at what we are supposed to do in this world. I could like broaden a little bit what the Rebbe is saying over here. The Rebbe speaks about it in different places as well, and I think the Rebbe connects with what we're soon going to have. One way of looking at the world is that Hashem made the entire world and everything in it permitted to us. And then there are certain things that Hashem said we cannot do. So, therefore, I'm in doubt or I'm leaning towards indulging. So my attitude is going to be what's permitted is permitted. And what's not permitted is we can look and find different loopholes and atadim, whatever. This, the Rebbe says, Chassidim say, is the approach of someone that did not study Chassidus, does not know the Chassidus perspective on it. The Chassidus perspective is, and soon we'll understand this more so why this is that way, that really nothing should be permitted to me. Again, we'll soon see why. But there were certain situations and certain things which Hashem permitted to us. Okay, so the rule is like you shouldn't be doing like anything. The exception of where Hashem lets you do those things, don't overindulge. Don't go immerse yourself in it too much. Do it to the most limited amount possible. So the Rebbe is going to explain what's the reasoning behind that approach. In truth, in truth, not just on Shabbos, but even throughout the week, doing work should not have been permitted. How come? It says that the heavens and the earth I fill. And Hashem's glory fills the entire earth. Therefore, because of the glory and the honor of the King of Kings Hashem, it would not be permitted to do any work. Someone that makes a signal in front of the king, this is a very severe disrespect shown to the king. Can you imagine? You're in the king's palace, or the king comes to visit you, and you're a shoemaker, and you just continue over there repairing shoes. The king is in front of you. You can't move. You have to stand up and stand at attention. So therefore, that's what should have been. That's the situation which should have been, and therefore, really, I should not be allowed to do work at any time. And the truth is, Chassidus brings down that this is really the reason for Shabbos not being able to do work, because Shabbos, it's the ascent of all the worlds. The worlds go up to a very high level. Therefore, we are more so in the presence of the king than we are even now. Therefore, we need to have a cessation of any type of work. But so why are we allowed to work 6 days of the week? The Torah permitted, and not only permitted, but directed us to do work. Like it says, Hashem will bench you in all that you do, and even more so, it says 6 days you should do work, and later we'll talk about that the Chazal interpret that as a command that a person should go to work. Therefore, is in the measure of what is necessary. The Torah gave us permission to work. I will be a Seder Mizu, but if it's more than what's necessary, so there are a few problems if a person works more than is necessary. And again, it's not just limited to work to making a living, but any preoccupation and any type of involvement of physical needs, if the person does overly what's necessary, in addition to the fact that the matter is indicative of the fact that the person is lacking the recognition that the main thing is that it's Hashem benching, skip the parentheses. So you're missing that basic recognition that there is that's Hashem's bracha. Yes, kan gam inyan shel mechve kama malta. There's also the idea that in front of the king you are doing your own thing, etc. So the Rebbe says, if so, let's go back to the pasuk. The pasuk says, "Yigia kapecha kisoicha." The toil, the labor of your hands, you shall eat. It should only be the labor of your palms, only the labor of your hands. It should not be investing your mind and your heart and so on. So we explained it very well why it's the hand. But the Rebbe is going to pose the question: why should you call it Yigia? Al Shalachura built in Muvan, seemingly it's not understood. Madua Nikra Davar Bakasam Shem Yigia. Why is it called in the pasuk toil or labor Yigia Kapecha? Especially since we explained that he's completely disinterested, he's just doing it without interest whatsoever. So how can it be called toil? Toil seems to indicate that he's invested in it. But the Rebbe is going to explain now just the opposite. When I'm interested in doing something, then even something that may be difficult seems easy. And when I'm not interested in doing something, even the easiest thing can be difficult. So this is what the Rebbe is going to say, Yigia kapecha, the toil of your palm. Meaning, if a person is doing the malach in such a way that it's only his hand, and he's not interested in it, because his brain and his heart is invested in higher things, so then anything he does, even the most insignificant thing, is very difficult. We see this with our kids, that, it's a small thing, but it's homework, it's schoolwork, it's chores, it's nothing. All I'm asking you, pick up the paper that fell on the floor. Oh, it's so hard. Why? Because there's no interest. Let's see it inside. Second to last paragraph in the end of the page. The matter will be understood according to what it's known. Someone that's involved in the matter, that he has satisfaction in it. Even if he invests in it a lot of his energy, he doesn't become so exhausted. Because he has satisfaction from it. As opposed to being involved in something that he has no satisfaction in it. Even if the work is a very small amount of work, he becomes tired out. So too in our top. Because of the situation, he has no gishmak in the physical. He's only doing so because he's forced to do so. Despite the fact that this involvement is being used for Hashem's service. To such a degree that it's considered and explained as fulfilling a mitzvah, his work that he's doing during the 6 days of the week. According to what the Chazal say, I mentioned it in passing before, that why does it say 6 days you shall work? 6 days you shall work is not just telling you that a person will work, but it's something that we are being told to do. It's a positive command, the Chazal say, to go to work during the 6 days. Yet, despite the fact it's in a way that it's a positive, it's a mitzvah, and so on, still in all, he is involved and busy with physical things which are not what he's about. He's in the world of the mind. He's in the world of the spirit. Physical things play no role in his life. And what is the satisfaction in things that are open mitzvahs, not something that the Chazal have to derive? It says tavi, that means it's a mitzvah. Therefore, the involvement that the person has in working, even though he's doing it with his hands, it's something that's considered that he has done in a way with difficulty. Because of this, that he's being forced to do so, like we said before, even a small amount, or midam utazushal amal, even a small amount of work, to rak bekoyach hasiyah balvad, it's only in the power of action. It's not that he's putting in a lot of effort, but it's just like in passing. That exhausts him very much. Because he doesn't want the matter as it is on its own. He doesn't want the thing itself. He's awaiting the moment that he can conclude this involvement and to devote himself to Torah mitzvahs. Now we're going to understand what our pasuk at the beginning of our parsha is saying. This is therefore the explanation of pasuk. 6 days the work shall be done. Shabbos, and the seventh day it will be a Shabbos of Shabboses, as we'll soon explain the double expression. So the Shabbos should be the way it's supposed to be. It needs to be a preface, it needs to be introduction of the 6 days of the week. That how am I doing the rest of the days of the week? That the work should be done in a way of in passing with a tzedeh under the word of the letter Tav, as we'll soon explain. If the person, as we'll soon explain, that if the person is completely immersed with his mind and his heart and his entire being in doing his work during the weekdays, it's very hard that Shabbos, the person should be completely divorced from it and really experience Shabbos in its full spiritual sense. Let's see the bottom of this first column. And in Nemar it says, a person should always envision himself during Shabbos. When Shabbos comes in, he should always envision himself as if all of his work is complete. And the Rebbe explains, if a person is immersed the entire days of the week in his business with Torah, and he's very involved in them, when the day of Shabbos comes, and he wants to uproot himself and remove himself for the day of Shabbos, at least from his involvement. But lasik b'Torah b'tfilah, and when it comes Shabbos, he wants to be involved solely in Torah and davening. To examine and look at the glory of the King. In other words, to appreciate Hashem and godliness. So what happens? The 6 days of the week, if he's completely immersed during the 6 days of the week, so they bleed into Shabbos. They impact the Shabbos as well. So then what escorts him is different foreign thoughts. Thoughts that in them the person is immersed and embedded all the days of the week. You say to him is even more so, he says, even thoughts that he has, really it's not even about work, but it's just worldly matters. They not really preoccupied, chayvim, evalvim, like negative things, confuse him and burden him. Once he opened up himself to worldly matters, it's known, she has dealt with sucham, if there's an open door, so everybody tries to get in. Therefore, he cannot truly fulfill Shabbos in a true Shabbosdik sense, in a true immersion into the Shabbos experience, to truly transcend the weekday experience. But when 6 days, the malach is done, as if it's like done on its own. Shabbos, and on the seventh day, it's a Shabbos of Shabbos. Meir as Oira Shabbos, then the light of Shabbos shines by him. Yes, well, came even more so. Shabbos, and Pamayim Shabbos, that's twice Shabbos. Mishum Shaladidoi Teasa B'derech Mamela, since by him it's Teasa in an like automatic way, it happens by itself. So then the truth is that even during the rest of the week, during the 6 days of the week, and during the weekdays, it's also already a state of Shabbos by him. And therefore, Shabbos, and then when the actual day of Shabbos arrives, so then what arrives is an increase, an additional holiness. Shabbos, Shabbosan, the Shabbos of Shabbos. Kach Maturetzes, Hakushia, Hashlishis. Well, this is answered the third question that we had about why does it say twice Shabbos, Shabbos. Lefiza Maturetz, Hakushia, Hashnia, that we asked. What our second question was, why is it necessary to mention Shabbos over here? Why is Moshe Rabbeinu telling us about Shabbos if it was already told us in Aseres HaDibros? It came ain't kanatzivah Shabbos here in our parsha, not the command for Shabbos. The mitzvah of Shabbos we learned already by the Aseres HaDibros in the Ten Commandments. But rather in our parsha, it's Kiyim Echlag Yel Shabbos. Rather, it's teaching us the secret how to attain and how to reach the level of Shabbos in our lives. According to this, we also understood the connection between Moshe Rabbeinu gathered the 6 days to do Malacha, Lebein Yom Kippurim, the morrow of Yom Kippur, Kan Seder Tikkun L'Cheta Egel. Over here was the order of repairing the sin of the golden calf. The golden calf was Avodah Zarah. The Rebbe is going to explain what Avodah Zarah is, idolatry. What is that in its most subtle and most fine way of idolatry that everyone is susceptible to? Yachaz L'Chet Avodah Zarah. I'm a Rambam concerning the sin of Avodah Zarah. The Rambam says, Shadavar B'Metoch Kach. The matter comes as a result. Shahashpa Malmailo Iveras Derech Hakichom Amazolah. Since all types of flow of energy comes from above through the stars and the constellations. Like it says in the pasuk of Megid with Shemesh, when the sweetness of the crops come from the sun. So the sun helps things grow, the moon helps things grow, etc., etc. So though also those that served Avodah Zarah then did not solely attribute the powers of the growth of the crops to the stars and to the constellations. They believed that they were just intermediaries. They called the stars and the constellations gods of God, the God that they call Hashem, the God of gods. So there's the gods of the constellations and the stars, and then there's Hashem that's over them. They also give importance to the intermediaries. But that is still Avodah Zarah. But in truth, one may not serve these intermediaries because they are only like an axe in the hand of the wood chopper. Nobody would think of thanking or serving a axe. We would just thank the wood chopper that brought us the wood and not the axe. The same thing. All the kechavim mazolas, all the heavenly bodies that contribute to the growth of our crops and so on and so forth. These are things you cannot serve. These are things you cannot thank and praise. So that was the problem with Avodah Zarah. In a similar sense, in a more subtle sense, when a person believes that by doing this scheme and this plot and this type of thing to be able to attain whatever physical needs they are, so they are making these physical things of his tricks and work and so on as intermediaries, as if they are helping out Hashem. There's a story I recently read that there was this old lady that her son had an inn, a krechma, that in those days the inn used to be also a bar where the non-Jews used to come to drink, take a drink and so on. And he was having a very difficult time to be able to cover the bills and so on. And every day the old lady would daven to Hashem and say, you can do, and she would give Hashem advice. She told Hashem, do this to help my son. Different day she would give a different idea and so on. One day, a group of goyim came in, and the last drop of vodka was finished. So they they were making a lot of noise, and they started pounding on the table. He said, "We want a drink. Judovska, where are you hiding the drinks? Where are you hiding the mashke? We won't leave here without our drinks." So didn't have a choice. They were threatening to tear the place apart. So he took the barrel of where it's usually kept the vodka and he filled it up with water and he served them it. And miracle of miracles, they loved it. And they asked him for more and they asked him for more. And he literally became rich overnight from that group of people that came there demanding vodka that he didn't even have. When his mother heard the story, she turned to Hashem. I asked you and I begged you all these different ways, but I never thought of such a type of idea for you to do it. In other words, the Eibishter doesn't need our help in saving us and bringing us parnasa and so on and so forth. And therefore, all the schemes and all the plots and all the plannings in parnasa or all other physical things, we can leave the planning and the scheming and the tricks all to Hashem. We have to ask Hashem, I need parnasa, I need help, I need help, I need a shidduch, I need this, I need that, I need the other. The Eibishter will already find a way how to take care of it. And if we do something other than that, and we believe that we need to invest our energies and our mind to be able to help Hashem along, it's in a subtle way similar to what these Ovdei Avodah Zarah attributed to the constellations and the stars, some type of powers of like assisting Hashem. Let's see how the Rebbe says it inside. In teachings of Chassidus, it's explained in a more subtle way, in a more refined way. The devotion and the immersion of our effort and all types of schemes and plotting in business. They are also, in a subtle manner, a type of idolatry. Where does it come from that the person has all these plots and schemes? Because he's giving importance and he's giving a lot of value to the business and to these intermediaries. We're talking about someone that believes in Hashem, and he believes that it says in the pasuk that Hashem will bless you. Still in all, he gives importance, and he gives also value, only to the business. Therefore, he invests in the matter itself with his intellect. This is similar to bowing down. How are idols served? Bowing down. What does one do when one bows down? That he's a person physically bowing down. They are bending their head. The same thing, the person that is investing their brain in the business instead of relying on Hashem are also bending their head in the figurative sense. And the Rebbe says the truth is, bending one's head figuratively in a certain way is worse than bending one's head physically, literally. It's even worse than that. It's because bending one's head, that's not physical. Over here, he invests his spiritual head, as his intellect, in an intermediary. Because he gives that intermediary, the business, for example, value. This means to say, I'm sorry, when this idea of 6 days usual work with a pasach under the top, isuk poil, and a proactive type of involvement, but comes as a result of giving the business importance. When a person comes to the true recognition that the business, the work, or any other physical endeavor that the person is doing is only like an axe in the hand of the woodchopper. So then he's not invested his head and the majority of his being in his business. He's only acting in a way that it's done as if by itself. Top of the next page, the next column, I'm sorry. We understood also another reason why the way he's acting in such a way is in such as if it's happening by itself. Because it's axiomatic. It's given, it's a given, it's an accepted idea in his mind. It's not the business that's giving him the making a living. Rather, through the agency of the business, he has the parnasa. From the fact that Hashem gives you the bracha, so therefore it's as if from itself. It's not my doing, it's the Eibishter's doing. Now it's understood why Moshe gathered them on the Mar of Yom Kippur, because that was supposed to be a repair for the Avodah Zarah. Shekein Seder Atikun V'Akiras Achet Avodah Zarah U'Sheishes Yamim Te'asem Malacha Me'elav. The 6 days you will do Malacha on its own. The Rebbe, I'll just say it outside. The Rebbe also says a similar idea that it comes to the spiritual as well. That when it comes to the spiritual, one needs to be doing so in such a type of way, not because of their enjoyment, but they have to realize that Hashem empowers them. And this is similar to the idea of bitachon that we've spoken about in different shiurim, that a person has to have trust and confidence in Hashem, that Hashem will help him do Torah mitzvahs. And therefore, the way how he does Torah mitzvahs is not to attribute it to his own, that he is accomplishing it, he's doing the tzedakah, he's doing the mitzvah. It's all happening from Hashem. And the Rebbe goes on to say that's the idea of Vayakhel Moshe. Then we are gathering everything together. All the berurim and all the netzutzos of the world become collected and elevated. And through that, we accomplish our purpose here in this world.
Thank you, Rabbi Bart.